So if you make an application to the university early, you have an offer letter from the university.
Then you can apply.
Then you can apply for the scholarships. And just in case if somebody doesn't have a good CGPA, still there are universities which offer bursaries on the basis on the nationality of the student. The Commonwealth scholarship does cover the entire tuition fee and the living. So the student is not really spending. What happens is when you apply to a university on your own, and if you make a mistake, that can still be rectified by contacting the university. But if you apply for your visa and you make a mistake, don't wake up in your last semester and start looking for jobs.
इंडिया में क्या है मतलब put it on your horse standards 10, 12 bachelor's master's work.
ट्यूशन फीस और जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज में कनेक्शन नहीं होता है. ट्यूशन फीस और स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग में कनेक्शन होता है.
स्कॉलरशिप इतनी बढ़ रही है पूछो मत.
UK and India, especially studying in the UK, that has been a story that has been close to me for nearly 20 odd years. And the reason? Jaya Bachchan, Hrithik Roshan, and Kareena Kapoor. Way back in 2003, 2004, when I was a student, that's the time K3G came out. And among other things, as a student, what I really liked was the colleges over there. But that was decades ago. And in these past decades, a large number of Indian students have opted for UK as a destination for their studies. And UK does offer a lot of opportunities as well. You can get courses on AI, you can get courses on arts. And these are really, really good options. And to deep dive into what options UK offers us, today we have Aarti Mishra with us, who has been counseling students probably from the time K3G came out, roughly 20 odd years. She runs Excel Overseas based in Mumbai. And welcome, Aarti, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So my first question, Aarti, is simply this. Why has UK become one of the most sought after destinations for study abroad when there are such large number of choices available?
As rightly said, there are quite a new countries which have emerged like Germany, France, Netherlands, but UK is still an attractive destination for its high quality of education and diversity, flexibility in the teaching methods. So if you refer the ranking, the top 100 universities, the maximum universities are from the UK after the US. Generally, these universities don't have an application fee with a free application, and some of them don't even ask for English language proficiency test. And not to forget that it's an English-speaking country. So, the other countries that I've mentioned, you need to learn the local language for your daily life. So, in UK, that it's a less hassle.
Easier, and the free part, I'm sure, free application part, I'm sure makes a difference. Why has UK become popular, at least over the last few decades, as a study destination? And I believe in terms of numbers, it's coming fairly close to even US right now.
It is definitely, year by year, it has increased. And US always been a popular destination because, for students, when it is studying abroad, they think that going to the US. But UK has been offering a good quality education, and a lot of students, the second popular destination has always been UK.
Yep, and I believe UK also has one of the, or probably most of the oldest universities in the world would probably be in England and UK. I believe you're very closely associated with University of Edinburgh.
Yes. So I worked with multiple UK universities. So UK has something called as Russell Group universities, modern universities. So University of Edinburgh, which is ranked 16th in the world. I was working there as a project and partnership manager, and it's a part of a Russell Group university, one of the very top universities.
Also, you were working in Edinburgh with the University of Edinburgh?
No. So they have their license office in Mumbai. So I was a part of the Mumbai office.
Well, I've been to Edinburgh, and by far Scotland remains one of my favorite places to go. The reason for that is not really education, but the whiskies that they're definitely a great place to be. But let's say if there is a student who's actually planning to apply for UK universities, can you give us an idea of how long it takes, when should they start applying and stuff like that?
Sure. So UK has 3 intakes: January, May, and September. September is the major intake, it's the main intake, and they should apply as early as possible, like a year in advance. So, undergraduate students apply through UCAS, that is a body through which undergraduate students need to make an application, and the early deadline with them is in the month of January, and the final deadline is in the month of June. And for postgraduate students, it's also important to apply early because there are a lot of scholarships which have a deadline in the month of, I mean, between March to May, depending on the university. So making application early would help.
Okay, so can you just give me a little more detail? So let's say if I am a third-year student of a 4-year course, I'm studying engineering. I'm right now in my 5th semester, I should start applying, or 6th semester or 4th semester. When should I start applying for my master's such that I finish my graduation here and then perhaps join the September batch that starts?
Right. So a year in advance, meaning when you enter your 4th year as an engineer, that is the time you start working on your, document like your statement of purpose, letter of recommendations, and your English proficiency test. So you work on that. And for example, September 26th, the applications would open from September 25. So that is the time you should start making the application. This would help to avoid the last minute hassle.
Is there any other advantage, let's say in terms of scholarships or something like that, if you apply early?
So UK offers quite a lot of scholarship. There is something called as Great Scholarship, which is offered in partnership with British Council. There are a lot of bursaries. There is early payment discount. So all these scholarships have a deadlines. They start from March to May. So if you make an application to the university early, you have an offer letter from the university.
Then you can apply.
Then you can apply for the scholarships. So it is very important. And when I say deadlines, we don't have to wait for the scholarship deadline. The scholarships would open from February. So you can start making scholarship applications in February, which would help you write a good essay which is required to obtain that scholarship. Some universities ask for a video. So if you keep everything for the last minute, your work will be compromised. So chances of getting scholarship will reduce.
And a large percentage gets a scholarship or a small percentage of people get scholarship. What all does it depend upon? On how much marks you have, which colleges you come from?
Which college would not matter. The university would definitely matter, but university name would matter to avail the English proficiency waiver, English proficiency test waiver. Like ICSE board, CBSE board, or Maharashtra State Board. Generally, with most universities, widely you would have English proficiency waiver. But for scholarship, percentages CGPA would matter. And just in case if somebody doesn't have a good CGPA, still there are universities which offer bursaries on the basis on the nationality of the student. So if you're coming from a certain nation, you do get that bursary. An early payment discount, which I said, it's a reduction to the tuition fees. If you pay the full tuition fee before the start of the intake or the set deadline by the university. So even if the CGPA is average, there are still chances to get scholarship. And if your CGPA is good, you definitely get good scholarships in the UK.
Okay. So let's say if I've done an engineering from let's say an IIT or a lesser college, what you're trying to tell me is much more than the college, it would matter what sort of a CGPA I have in graduation?
Yes. Why I'll tell you this. Universities have, their certain admission criteria. So 2:1 is written. 2:1, which is equivalent to like 70 to 80% Indian standard. 2:2 is between 60 to 70%.
Okay.
So, to get admission, 2:1 is enough. So it doesn't really matter which is a university. Now, for example, if you're a university, so universities also have sections. So University of Mumbai, IIT, as you said, these are section 1 university. But if somebody is coming from, I don't want to name a university, but if somebody is coming from a very,
Tier 2 university.
Right. In that case, the percentage requirement would be higher.
Acha. Okay. So they sort of compensate for that in terms of percentage.
Right.
And so when you talk about this scholarship, typically what is the sort of fee like in these universities for masters? Because I believe it proves to be cheaper because the masters here are a 1 year masters.
Yes.
So what's a typical fee like, and what sort of scholarships can you expect in that?
So masters as a great scholarship which is there with British Council. Universities also have their vice chancellor scholarships or different scholarships which are there. Average amount of a scholarship is between say 5,000 to 10,000 pounds.
Which is roughly 5 to 10 lakh rupees.
Yes, it is a very good amount. And the tuition fees would range now. UK has about 160 plus universities. So you have universities wherein the tuition fee is barely 12 to 18 lakhs, and you have universities where the tuition fee is between 30 to 40 lakhs. Depending on the CGPA of the student and his financial capabilities, we can guide them and then also try for the scholarship.
So let's talk about, let's say, some of the top universities. Say University of Edinburgh is what you're associated with. What's the typical fee like over there?
It is between 30 to 40 lakhs.
Between 30 to 40. And the scholarships that they offer, so would there be specific scholarships which are based on that university, or there would be generic scholarships which are applicable to multiple universities over there?
No, so the great scholarship which is applicable to multiple universities. It is not just, but universities have their own specific scholarships as well. Like Newcastle University, which is a Russell Group University, they offer vice chancellor scholarship for 7,000 pounds. Queen's University Belfast, they also offer roughly 5,000 to 7,000 pounds scholarship. So they have university specific scholarships too, apart from
yes, one which are. That's great. So I think these scholarships would make a substantial difference, because if we are talking about typically a 30 to 40 lakh fee, and out of that, if a 5 to 10 lakh scholarship that you can get, you're talking about roughly 25% of the fee being reduced.
Definitely. And this is all about, the universities that we've just discussed. These are all probably in the top 100 or top 200 in the world, if you look at the ranking. So, getting a degree from such a highly ranked university at a reduced cost would, help you have a better prospects and have a very good career in future.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So one part of the scholarship is the marks part. Now, by the time I'm thinking of applying abroad, most of my marks are settled what my CGPA is going to be. Are there some other things that I can do which might increase my chances of getting a scholarship?
So scholarships are generally the merit-based scholarships. But if you write, there are some scholarships wherein you don't really have to write any additional essays or anything. And based on your academics, the university would, assess the application and give you the scholarships on this, like with your offer letter. There are some scholarships wherein you have to make a separate application. In that, your CGPA and a essay written to you would help. So some social work, voluntarily done work would add on, and a good essay. Now, when I say good essay, not essay which is generated by AI.
So that would be, I believe, becoming fairly common in the years to come. Do you really think that people are even do you see students writing essays based on AI for scholarship? Because that's weird.
Yes.
See, I can understand writing an essay for an old email that I'm sending to someone, but this is a 5-10 lakh rupee question. I would put in a lot of effort into it rather than just relying on ChatGPT or something like that.
No, but I don't know. The age is such because they are barely 20, 21 or maybe 25 in some cases. So I always give this example to all my students at the time of visa, because there is something called as credibility interview. I'll tell you why I'm saying this right now. So if you go to a market to buy a t-shirt, you're making an investment for say 3,000-4,000 maximum. And you don't really buy a t-shirt which really, the first that you see in the shop. You would see the quality, the color, whether it really matches the value for money basically. And whatever best suits you, you will buy that. So for that, you'll probably go to 10 different shops, or here you're making an investment for 30-40 lakhs. But still, students are not aware about the courses that the universities offer. I'm talking about the subjects. They are not aware about the subjects or the location of the university. They're, what they're going to study, what they're going to gain out of this. So all that they should be aware if I statement of purpose, which is a very important document at the time of application, I have seen at Excel Overseas we have actually have a software to detect the statement of purpose, and we've seen that 100% AI generated statement of purposes, even at the time of application and for essays. And if you really make some mistakes like this, you're not going to get admission and not the scholarship.
Yeah, and they should. Your essay can be detected by a software that it was written by AI. I think that's plagiarism, and that's, at least as of today, it should be grounds for cancelling your candidature. I'm fully in support of universities for that. So, are there any other scholarship based upon, let's say, because Indian colleges, some of them do that, let's say some sports-based scholarship or some other extracurricular-based scholarships, stuff like that?
Not for the international students. They have a lot of such scholarships, but for the local students, not for international.
Not for the international students. Being from India, if you are applying for these scholarships, does that make a difference? Which country the candidate is coming from? That because what I've heard at least is that they prefer people from XYZ countries for these scholarships, or it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
So some nationalities, like some scholarships, are offered to certain nationalities. So those are called bursaries, and those are based on the nationality. There is something called a Commonwealth Country Scholarship also, which is also offered by the UK government. And for that, Indian nationals, so there are the Commonwealth countries basically, they can apply for that scholarship. But there are certain rules and regulations for that. For example, UK does offer 2 years post-study work visa after the course completion. So if you avail the Commonwealth country scholarship, you cannot take that post-study work, right? You have to immediately come back. So there are pros and cons.
Pros and cons. Yeah, so that would be a big trade-off, because I would assume that if I'm going to UK spending 35-40 lakh rupees, one of my main goals would be to work there, if not long term and if not forever, at least for a few years, so that I can pay the loan back, make a little bit of money, maybe even send some money back to India.
Definitely. Sorry, I'm cutting in between. The Commonwealth scholarship does cover the entire tuition fee and the living. So the student is not really spending.
That's 100%.
That's 100. It's difficult to get.
Really, that's 100% scholarship, and they would be selecting the best of the best for that. And I've been reading that for Indian students, it's starting to become a little bit difficult when they are applying to Canada with respect to visas and stuff like that. Is there a similar trend in the UK as well? Or rather, let me ask a slightly broader question. What does the visa process look like for UK universities?
It's the simplest. UK does accept full education loan, which covers the tuition fee and living expenses, unlike other countries. So there are countries wherein only 50% loan is possible, and the rest of the money needs to be in your account, which is difficult. But UK doesn't have that. So, and the visa process is simpler. Everything is in black and white. If your visa is rejected, you get the reason in black and white, which can be, if it is, you can rectify, you can reapply for your visa.
For the same cycle?
For the same cycle. Because they have something called as a priority visa. So now the standard visa process would take like about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Priority visa would come in 10 days time, and a super priority would come in a day's time. Obviously, you pay extra for that, but for the same cycle, instead of wasting your year, you can still make it. Generally, if all your documents are in place, you do get your UK visa. The chances of rejection are, very, very, you have to prepare for the credibility interview and all. So as a counselor, we can definitely help students with that. But if everything is in place, you do get your visa. So you don't get surprises like, for US or Canada, that everything is right. So why still my visa is rejected? Nobody knows.
US is pretty bad in this stuff, because I've heard from students and other people that even the best of the candidates who they thought that this guy इसका तो पक्का हो ही जाएगा, इसमें कहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, वो रिजेक्ट हो गया. और क्यों रिजेक्ट हो गया? नहीं, मतलब probably embassy से आज वो आया था, ऊपर से फरमान थी नहीं, आज का वीजा किया हो गया. But the UK, so what you're trying to tell me that for UK it's very method based, and so What are some of the common mistakes that you have seen people make when they're applying? So I understand that, let's say if someone is going via a counselor, via Excel Overseas or any other professional consultant, they'll take care of the basic mistakes. But I'm sure once they make a mistake and then they come to you. So have you seen some of the common mistakes that people make? And can you tell that to our audience so that they don't make the mistake when they're applying?
Definitely. So UK or any other country for that matter, if you're applying for the visa, your name need to match with your passport. So like now my name is Aarti Ashutosh Mishra. In my passport, for example, if my given name is Aarti Ashutosh and my surname is Mishra, and in my visa form, if I write my given name as Aarti and surname Mishra, so Ashutosh is,
Ashutosh is not there.
so my visa will be rejected because my name is not and there's on our
Passport.
And for UK, they have to match their CAS, that is the final document issued by the university to apply for the visa. That is CAS, CAS, confirmation for acceptance for studies. So that's the final document. So when you apply for the visa, you have to match the CAS details with your passport.
So throughout the process, you will need to maintain that Aarti Mishra, which is there on the passport and
Yes. And submitting your financial documents. Sometimes students submit outdated financial documents. They don't prepare for the credibility interview, or I mean, they prepared with credibility interview just by checking YouTube. Like nowadays everybody is a doctor. You have some disease, you just Google it, and you become a doctor. So they feel like you see some videos on YouTube, and now you know the process, and you prepare for the interview, and finally you get the rejection. So then you'll end up with some professionals.
yeah, so people learn from their mistakes. But I doubt many people would do that. See, if I have a cold, I'll probably try to cure myself. But if I have something serious, I will go to a doctor. And applying abroad is something which is it's a probably one of the most important decisions of your life, where you're going to study, costs a lot of money, and engaging a professional sounds like a basic thing, but I fully agree with you. I've seen my enough share of students who don't take this stuff fairly
Yes.
seriously.
What happens is when you apply to a university on your own, and if you make a mistake, that can still be rectified by contacting the university. But if you apply for your visa and you make a mistake,
Not much can be
done. Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
And let's say a lot of countries, they allow people to maybe work for a certain period of time after you have studied there. A lot of them allow them to work part-time when they are there. What's the situation in UK like for that part-time work and probably after that?
So students can work 20 hours per week while studying, 40 hours in the semester breaks. They can support their living expenses. Having said that, they should not feel that the moment they're going to land, they're going to get a job. So 2-3 months it would take, because you have to get adjusted with the new methods, new country. So within 2-3 months, you get a job. After the course completion, UK offers 2 years post-study work visa. So students can find a job during that period. There are some universities which offer internships. So UK Masters is for 1 year. So 1 + 1. So 1 year you get your studies. Second year is your internship, which is called as a placement in UK.
Okay.
And then after that, you get 2 years post-study work visa. So it's 1 + 3.
3. You get paid in this internship?
Generally, yes.
Okay. And this 20-hour limit that is there for the part-time work, is it work that is similar to the stuff that you are studying, or you can work anywhere, any sort of a job that you get?
Those are generally odd jobs.
Generally odd.
Yes. So you work in a hotel, in a supermarket, at a petrol pump. You can work as a student ambassador for the university. And there are some university jobs like you assist your professor and all. But those are limited in number. And obviously you have a good networking skill and you network with professors and all, you probably land up getting. Those are generally highly paid as compared to the other odd jobs.
I'm sure that requires a higher amount of skill as well. Jobs enough to, let's say, sustain your living expenses?
Generally, yes. I mean, I have seen students, covering 100% of their living. So, yeah, but I don't want to emphasize on it too much, because the main focus is not to get a part-time job.
Yeah. You're primarily going there to study,
have a
so
degree.
that should be the
Yeah.
priority over there. And in this, the 2 years that follow, do the universities provide some sort of assistance in getting a job, or how do they find jobs there? In India, there is
placement cell.
that company will come to your college and you would get a job there.
So the concept is slightly different. There is no campus recruitment how we have it in India, but companies do come on campus for the seminar. A lot of guest lecturers are basically from the industry, and universities do conduct job fair. There is a placement cell at the university. They help you, with the CV writing. They prepare you for the interview, all of that. So the support is given. The concept of spoon feeding is not
Is
there.
not. And even this concept of spoon feeding and placements, even in India, it's there, maybe the top 10% or top 5% of the colleges. Once you remove the top 10% colleges in India, you don't get placements in other colleges as well. And the sort of jobs that we are talking about, so let's say if I'm spending 30 to 40 lakhs sorts of the amount, typically what's the starting salary like?
So depends on your skills
Obviously.
and the category, but I would say between 30 to 40 lakhs a year is the average salary for a fresh graduate. There is a website called seek.com.au, I believe.
SEEK.
SEEK, yeah. People can Google it. I might have said the wrong, but you get to know about the job and the salary, the skills and the salary over there. So that's the average. But any fresh graduate between 30 to 40 lakhs per year is what you can expect.
Okay. And let's say I have taken a loan to go there, and as you're saying, 100% loan is still possible. In your experience, typically what you're seeing, people are able to pay back this loan in 2 years, or they take 10 years, or they take a year. What's roughly the median like? I understand that it would be different for everyone, any
Right.
sort of jobs.
Ma-
But
Maximum 5 years, because if I just consider the salary that's 30 to 40 lakhs, let's take average is maybe 35 lakhs. The living would be maybe 10 lakhs, 10 to 12 lakhs. There will be some taxes, and the balance is what you save. So obviously you don't spend your entire saving and your, repaying the loan. So typically 3 to 5 years is a good time to repay the loan.
And then again, I understand that these would be rare cases, but I've also started to read that's more on the Canada front and not so much on the UK front. That student went to Canada, did masters, couldn't find a job, and then they had to come back. Have you seen that sort of pattern for UK as well, or not so much? Because in Canada, it has become fairly common. People going there, doing their masters, and not being able to find a job and coming back.
Luckily, it's not the case. UK, I mean, I always advise my students that, don't wake up in your last semester and start looking for job. If you do that, the chances of you getting the job would be lesser. But from the beginning, if you are in touch with the placement cell and whoever is coming on campus as a guest lecturer from the industry, if you network with them, you network with your professors, the chances of you getting the job are higher. You may not be in the same city. Like I've seen students who've studied in Liverpool and landed a job in Nottingham. So there is another thing that I want to add here, that people think that there are jobs available only in London, which is also a myth, because it's like, I'm saying that other than Mumbai, there are no
There's no
jobs
jobs in
available in India. So that's not the case. In fact, the tier 2 cities have better prospects, better quality of life. So you have your job, you have a good quality of life, and less competition, I would say, and the packages are fairly high.
Yeah, but once again, so I have a few friends who work in the oil industry in northern Scotland, and they get paid a lot. But those are very high-paying jobs which are available. London, I agree, is primarily the financial center. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But it's a developed country. You will obviously have opportunities over there.
They still feel it because it's a new country, new climatic conditions, food habits are different, culture is different. I'll share my experience. When I traveled first time to Australia, I had traveled, and my flight was from Mumbai to, I think, to Sydney, but via Hyderabad. So and this was my first time in the flight also. So when I was in the flight from Mumbai to Hyderabad, everywhere I had brown skin and maybe 3, 4 white people. So I was okay. In Hyderabad, the situation was different. All Australians and maybe 2, 3 Indians. And I was like, this is different. So, so people feel that. And some people, maybe, they are from tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. A Mumbai student may not feel it, maybe, because the kind of exposure that you get it in a metro city is different. But students from smaller places, they do feel homesick. I've seen students at the age of 25, 28 also have felt isolated and all. But universities have their clubs, their cultural events, and there are different societies. Students need to go out and get in touch with this, attend these events and get in touch with these clubs and societies, and this would help them, or rather, give an opportunity to meet new people, make new friends. But if they lock themselves in a room, then that's a problem.
So I was saving this question for the last. The awareness about UK is perhaps a little lesser than the US. What would you say is the best kept secret about UK universities?
Well, UK universities, some of the top universities, I mean, they don't have a first come first serve basis applications. So there is a pool system. So generally, the first deadline is in the month of November, the second in the month of March, and the final in the month of June. So what students think is, abhi time hai, मैं apply कर दूंगा. I have to give my IELTS, I have to write SOP, and they take plenty amount of time and just delay the process for no reason. When you apply in the first pool, the advantage is, suppose there are 200 seats, and for international students, 20 seats are there. In the first pool, you're competing for 20 seats. In the first pool, if 15 seats are filled, and now you apply
the next one, you're competing for 5.
So the chances of you getting into that university are thinner. So that's the difference. They should apply. They must apply early. And some niche courses like physiotherapy, sports medicine, fashion, there are early acceptance. So they must apply early. And otherwise the seats get full. So even if you have offer letter and if the seat is full, your offer will automatically get deferred to the next available intake. So you waste your time for no reason. And as I earlier mentioned, the statement of purpose, a lot of students write it with AI-generated ChatGPT, which is they should avoid. Otherwise, I mean, the entire process is quite simpler. Mostly everything is in black and white. So if you follow it, you're going to get there. UK has QAA, that is Quality Assurance Agency, which it's an independent body which evaluates the university's standard of education. So kind of, the quality is maintained throughout, and it's a shorter duration. Even engineering courses at undergraduate level for 3 years, master's is for 1 year. So you save time, and it's close.
That's substantial, because if you think about it, in India, if you have to do masters in engineering, that is a 4-year BTech and a 2-year MTech.
Yeah.
It takes 6, and you would be
doing it in just 4 years. Yeah. And UK is close to Europe, so during break time, just explore different countries. Added advantage.
Always positive, one of the better places to explore. No doubt about that. So, thank you, Aarti. Thanks a lot for taking out the time and explaining the UK universities and the UK application process to us. I hope all of you also enjoyed and learned something today, and probably enjoyed our conversation. So, but as Aarti said, before you pack your bags, follow the process. Be very, very meticulous about your application to the college, about the visa, and don't use AI. And one more thing that you should do, remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channel. Ending the episode of Beyond Borders with Handa on that note. Thank you.